to a competition here at the Regional Championship in Houston, Texas. Our last remaining undefeated player, 9-0, Noe Leal Jr. on Esper Goryeos at the top of the screen, playing against JT on Boros Energy.
And notably, Noe has a different build than the ones that we saw a lot last weekend, where we still see a copy of Gristlebrand in the main deck. We see a copy of Breeding Pool over Hedge Maze, when how big Surveil lands cannot be overstated are on the weekend.
And it is a Surveil land on turn 1, Meticulous Archive for Noe. And sigh of relief on the Boros side, every time you play against a Goryeos deck, you're hoping, don't mill Atraxa. So far, so good. Noe keeps the card on top, and it's a turn 1 Ragavan for Jay.
And, I mean, this is just sort of the chump check of Modern, right? In a lot of ways, we've seen a bunch of decks say, oh, I only need a couple of copies of Prismatic Ending early on. Otherwise, I hope to have this 3-card combo of Solitude, White Card, Ephemerate. Ragavan is really good at just saying, okay, well, you're not going to get a 2-for-1 with those here.
Right. So we go to turn 2 for Noe. Floodistran going to crack that right away. Not uncommon for the first play from these Goryeos decks to happen on turn 2.
Mm-hmm. Right, a lot of 2-drops in these decks. In general, you also see a bunch of multicolor cards because they're really good at being exiled to Solitude and Force of Negation, which I know is just in some ways reading the cards to people, but...
It does explain the card.
Yeah, thank you. We're getting there, but it gives you a greater range of combinatorics that where an Atraxa can give you a free spell to cast.
Whoa, okay. Fetch Shock, Godless Shrine, and Noe. All Thoughtseize myself.
Yes.
Atraxa to the graveyard.
You are dead. This is what it looks like. Here is the hand you will lose to.
Leftovers, a second Atraxa, Force of Negation, Quantum Riddler, and Goryeos Vengeance, I do believe.
Good belief.
All right, here comes Ragavan. Jay has got some work to do here. Psychic Frog is milled, or exiled, rather. Excuse me. Here's a treasure token.
Wow, if Jay were on the Mardu version, that would be castable.
Here's an Arid Mesa as land number 2. Psychic Frog, certainly a powerful turn-over-turn kind of value card. Same with Ragavan. Both of them fall a bit shy of Atraxa's output, I would say.
Yeah, that's one where I'm not a doctor, a mathematician, any of those things. 7-7 bigger than 2-1.
I learned a few things in my studies about the numbers 7 and 2 and 1.
I have approximate knowledge of many things.
Jay is going to try to figure out what to do against this face-up Goryeos Vengeance for Atraxa. It's going to start by cracking this Arid Mesa. Here's a basic Plains.
So something here we touched on a little bit coming into this match was the importance of a card like Goblin Bombardment being able to undo the lifelink keyword. What if the things that Atraxa can do, because it has Vigilance, is just keep attacking and gaining life that way?
Right, so here's some development for Jay. You see Guide of Souls and Voice of Victory, 1 life, 1 energy coming in. As we head back to Noe, there's that face-up Goryeos Vengeance. Yeah, we're going to start there. Here is Atraxa. Noe's going to look at the top 10 cards here.
Really looking for an untapped white source and an Ephemerate to keep Atraxa in play.
That makes sense to me. Keep Atraxa in play, get some more cards. Let's take a look at the reveals. Flooded Strand, Polluted Delta, March of Otherworldly Light, Goryeos Vengeance, Thoughtseize from the Prosperity Post, Force of Negation, Solitude, Ephemerate, there it is.
All right.
Basic
and
Plains.
Basic Plains, just like you said.
Quantum Riddler as well as the 10th card. Basic Plains reached for very quickly, going with a Solitude, a Thoughtseize, and Ephemerate.
Perhaps the most menacing Basic Plains possible. I have never seen one here that anyone can flip over and you look at it and you go, oh, that Plains is coming for me. That's... Ooh.
When you look into the Basic Plains also looks back into you.
Was that Whitman who said that?
Nietzsche, I believe. Yeah.
About planes?
Be careful not to play with Basic Plains, lest the Basic Plains also plays with you. All right, let's see what Noe is going to do here. But as you mentioned, there's kind of a face-up A plan here. Basic Plains, Ephemerate, Atraxa, after an attack, of course.
And this is the strength of the Goryeos deck, where You can have Thoughtseize do the normal thing that Thoughtseize does, i.e. take a card out of your opponent's hand. But you have so many cards that play a strong fair game like Thoughtseize or Psychic Frog, but then double as being an enabler for your quote-unquote combo.
Here's the attack. J to 10. Noe back to 20. Gonna look at 10 more cards after this Ephemerate on the Atraxa. Atraxa sticking around. Here is Pluto Delta, Psychic Frog, Faithful Mending, X2, Force of Negation, some lands, Island, Fetch Land, Godless Shrine, Atraxa, another, all three, there's 3 Faithful Mendings here. So, Force of Negation or Faithful Mending. It kind of just seems like this is just extra stuff, trying to make sure the game is rolled up. Force of Negation makes sense as a pick for sure.
And notably these Faithful Mendings being a recent adaptation from Tainted Indulgence, which saw a little bit more play in these decks before that because it could let you play a little bit of a better fair game, but Faithful Mending being exilable to Solitude would be so relevant here if there weren't another Atraxa in Noe's hand.
Basic Island, Force of Negation, that's Force of Negation number 2, both of them face up, and a little backup Atraxa to hand. And Ephemerate's going on rebound, why not? That's what it does.
So true.
Right, main phase, Solitude, that's when you're going to want to do it because Voice of Victory says you must. It's going to pitch that backup Atraxa. Voice of Victory, of course, the target here.
That makes a lot of sense. Guide of Souls asks you to have more for it to do something, and the Voice of Victory is turning off all of these Force of Negations.
Yep, that all tracks for me. Jay will gain 1 life. Not really a difference in the clock here. As we head back Jay's way, and Jay has their work cut out for them.
Really looking for some combination of things like Galvanic Iteration?
Here's a Vexing Bauble. There's actually 2 in the main deck this week.
Not bad. It's pretty nice against Amulet Titan and turning off something like Summoner's Pact.
Yeah, certainly an adaptation to Blue Belcher being the PT winning deck as well. And that's going to get cost by a Force of Negation. Makes sense. It's one of the cards it would turn off. Not that the Bauble was of terrible consequence at this stage in the game.
You play your cards as they're dealt, you know?
And those are the only ones you can cast.
Right.
And we saw Ragavan Connect before, a lot harder here. Got to do something about this 7/7 as Jay will crack a Flooded Strand. Down to 10. Basic planes, a lot more peaceful planes on Jay's side of the battlefield.
One of the best arts for planes ever, right? The Avon, which set was that originally? Was that Onslaught?
Yeah, it's
Odyssey.
Yeah, Odyssey or Onslaught.
I'm hearing Odyssey from Jeremy Knoll, man in the chair.
I must defer to Jeremy.
That is my career, actually. So yeah,
All right, a Johnny shows up, Nikadal Pariah. That's going to bring a cat token, 2 life and 2 energy, but no good attacks as we go back to Nui. Not even interested in trying to close the game. Yeah, let's go ahead and rebound this Ephemerate. Let's look at 10 more cards with our Atraxa.
And so much of this is basically there isn't an onus of pressure on Noe yet. At a certain degree, this is pretty close to the maximum output of his deck. But it looks like he's a little bit shallow on answers to creatures on the battlefield, so it makes some amount of sense to just say, no, I actually need to find something else like a Solitude and another Ephemerate and hope that I can just close the door from there.
Convenient you would mention Solitude and Ephemerate as they go to hand here.
Wow, I can't believe there were 2 copies of 2 4-of cards in the top 40 cards of Noe's deck.
Pretty lucky. Yeah, this is business as usual for Noe. You have to imagine a lot of his games have looked like this as he's sitting at 9-0, the lone undefeated player in the field. And now, a draw for turn.
10 cards in hand.
That's it.
Not a big deal.
I can't help but feel envious seeing a hand that large. And here's a Swamp and Thoughtseize. Take a look at what Jay is still holding.
I believe that's Ocelot, Pride, and Goblin Bombardment? Yes.
And actually goes for Ocelot Pride over the Bombardment.
I like that. There aren't very many targets for Force of Negation.
Sure.
Whenever you have Solitude Ephemerate rolled up, there is a degree where your opponent isn't going to be able to accrue enough creatures for bombardment to be that impactful. Also, there's another Thoughtseize.
Right, I said over. Why not both? And Jay is in a very rough spot. This is a game where Noe Thoughtseized himself, and then also just later has 2 Thoughtseize to roll up and wipe out the remaining resources for Jay.
Notably, I will say this: I do believe this is going to get better post-board. Game 1 looks pretty bad sometimes against these graveyard combo decks, where you see your opponent operate on an axis that you're really going to struggle to do anything in.
All right, so here comes Cat Warrior. Guide of Souls is going to pump some energy into that, making this an attack for 4. Atraxa thinking about blocking. I think a big part here is Jay's trying to transform the Ajani.
I would guess that's true. Any creature off the top means that Ajani can kill from here.
So there is the block, and here is Solitude with the transform trigger on the stack. Yeah, no, he's not interested in giving Jay any breathing room here. You were talking about sideboards. There was actually kind of a big check, even face up on the deck list here. Boros does tend to main deck, and Jay does have 2 Thraben Charms. So that turn 1 Thoughtseize myself, it was a risky line.
Definitely.
It worked out, though.
Right, you do. Well, one of the nice things is that you end up in these positions where there is Force of Negation, and you can combo on your opponent's turn as insulation.
Yeah. Right, so here is Flage. The Atraxa jumped in front of a 4-3. It had 4 damage on it. Flage will finish the job. Atraxa does go to the graveyard.
Okay, and all of a sudden, this game somehow looks close again.
Yeah, there is a Ephemerated Solitude, so all of the material off the battlefield, Jay just left with some lands. But, as you said, much closer than it was a turn ago.
I mean, this is part of what I love about this deck, is it does a bunch of really exciting things, but it all kind of culminates in one creature that will die to a removal spell.
And on topic of removal spell, there's a lot of cards in the graveyard with that Flage. Jay is 1 red source away from escaping that.
Right, and an Arena of Glory off the top would go bananas.
Let's see what Noe can do about it. We have a face-up Force of Negation. There's some consideration for tapping 5 mana. Smells like it could be a Quantum Riddler to me. It's going to be a Warp on it.
That makes some sense at this point. I think Noe has really just showed how much he values having extra cardboard in these games when you have all of these pitch spells that are 2-for-1ing yourself over and over and over in a deck that genuinely can't afford to do it. I definitely understand putting a premium on that.
Here is Psychic Frog, and that is really consistent with the way that Noe played the earlier turns. There was that consideration, do I actually rebound my Ephemerate on Atraxa? You miss that hit for 7, but you get the 4 extra cards in hand, and that matters, right? Yes. Players are really low on resources here.
Very true.
All right, we head back to Jay. Now facing down Psychic Frog, Solitude, and a Quantum Riddler waiting in the wings. Face up Force of Negation as well.
There have been so many fireworks for the life totals this game to be 23-19.
That's pretty outrageous, yeah. But as you've been saying, the games are about cards in hand. They are about position on the battlefield. The life totals will dwindle down once the dust settles there. Here is a fetch of Polluted Delta for Noe, down to 22.
I guess we're going to see him go down to 20 here. Probably for a breeding pool. Oh no, a Watery Grave. Okay.
Down to 24, Watery Grave indeed. Is there a 6-mana play you had in mind?
No, a lot of it in general is it is somewhat unlikely to get a Surveil land here when there's already an Atraxa in the graveyard.
Sure. Right, here comes Quantum Riddler, leaving Meticulous Archive untapped. So the 6 mana, I suppose, makes sense representing Ephemerate?
Yes, completely agree. And okay, here's one of the cool tricks you'll see in the deck where Quantum Riddler enters to draw the card, and we're going to actually see Noe discard 2 cards to Psychic Frog to sort of get some rummage equity, quote unquote.
That is filthy.
To draw an extra card.
All right, here comes Solitude and the now 3/4 Psychic Frog. And depending what Noe picked up, you can do that trick again with the Psychic Frog hit trigger too.
I suspect the one hidden card Noe has in hand at this point may be Gristlebrand. That's the reason to grab Watery Grave over Breeding Pool, is to build towards having enough black sources in play.
I love me a cast Gristlebrand angle.
Oh, same. Oh, same.
Galvanic Discharge. There's no energy floating, so this presumably targeting Solitude. It is. Solitude down. But the Frog looks to be connecting.
And this just shows how strong it's been that Noe was able to check creatures as soon as they hit the battlefield rather than giving Guide of Souls that much time to build up. I know Jay had to spend some energy to jump a cat token just to deal enough damage to an Atraxa, but it just speaks to how many resources that Noe is able to tax Jay on in the game.
So the Frog comes across, Jay to 16. The Frog draws a card, and Noe not interested in those tricks with discarding the Quantum Riddler here.
Huge sign of strength.
Oh, yes. And Jay has been doing the best they can to try to claw into this game. It's just been really hard. So many extra cards on Noe's side of the table. And just a draw and a pass. Opponent now attacking with Riddler and Psychic Frog. Already a 3-4. Right, Noe's going to discard a land, grow that Psychic Frog. Goryo's Vengeance. This game might be over this turn, and it is.
That's a lethal discard.
Jay will pick them up. Noe Leal up a game here in round number 10 of SCG Con Houston at the Regional Championship. Players reaching for sideboards. Noe, our undefeated player, you know all about Esper Goryo's. What do you like against Boros Energy in the sideboard here?
The biggest things that stick out to me are Wrath of the Skies and Celestial Purge. Celestial Purge in particular, one of the best ways to answer a resolved copy of something like Goblin Bombardment. It also can go over after a transformed Ajani since it gains red in its colors at that point. And then Wrath of the Skies is just the type of thing that's going to be good against any deck that's trying to commit a ton of creatures to the battlefield at once. Whenever you see Noe on the draw against something like an Ocelot Pride, this is the card you are going to see him knocking the top of his deck, hoping to find.
For JT on the Boros Energy side of things, now down a game. We'll be on the play in game number 2, but also probably looking for some help in the sideboard. What do we have for them?
A lot of nice hate options in the sideboard here. Containment Priest and Surgical Extraction, the first things that my eyes go to. I think you could make a case for Celestial Purge. That one, I'm really curious to see if Jay is trying to not dilute their ability to apply aggression that much. I think that aggro players, a lot of times, the really successful ones just say, no, I want to kind of customize my reactive suite, only change a couple of cards in sideboarding and get the real hammers, the things that stop the scary games. Containment Priest being strong not only against Goryo's Vengeance, but also Ephemerate. And really just want to make sure that I can still kill somebody by not cutting a bunch of creatures for a bunch of reactive cards and fall into a position where I'm going late against a deck with 5-drops.
For sure. That all tracks. And that game, Jay was still making meaningful plays even after 2-3 Atraxa triggers. So just needs a little help. Stuff like that, Surgical Extraction, maybe insulating even a little bit more against the graveyard stuff. So doesn't need that much extra. You don't want to dilute your deck, as you were saying.
Right, I completely agree.
All right, we are playing Modern here at the Regional Championship, and there is another event coming up next month. Exactly the same kind of thing. If you have a qualification for the season, if you're missing this weekend, there's the RC next month at SCG Con Las Vegas, November 21st to the 23rd. Of course, there's a ton more going on. Side Defense, you can play whatever format you like. For the Carmen, that's going to be Legacy.
I know. I'm actually thinking of going to this one. I have a bunch of friends where I don't believe I'm going to be casting it or anything like that, but I do love coming and hanging out, do love playing side events, and even if I'm not going, I know I'm going to be tuning into the stream because this is the back half of the same round of regional championships that we're casting right now. And watching the metagame evolve from event to event is just really cool. I'm super excited to see if Boros Energy continues to sort of gain meta share in a way that looks pretty healthy to me.
I haven't booked a flight. I did win an RCQ for this season. I'm thinking about Vegas. Promise looks nice.
For anyone on the broadcast that doesn't know this, Ryan and I have had the conversation about him thinking about going to this. I would say 3 times a day since getting here. You going? I'm thinking about doing it, and I'm excited to get the DM where you go. Okay, I pulled the trigger. What about you?
Here's my flight details. Where you staying?
You thinking about getting in?
You can find details about that event at starcitygames.com/SCGCon. and we just might see you there. Players taking some time to review the deck lists. You get to do this at these open deck list tournaments at the beginning of the round and between games.
Oh, and to show a bit of humility, Jeremy mentioned, a little bit after we were talking about that Plains admiring the Avon art, that was Invasion. Invasion Plains in JT's deck, great choice. I think that they have the Dominaria remastered ones, but I just love how clean that art looks. It's aged magnificently.
Yes. I didn't appreciate a lot of them at the time in the 2000s, but all of the blocks, Invasion, Odyssey, Onslaught, just those older frame, the foils,
yes,
where it's just the border with the shooting star. If you have a copy that's still in good condition, the borders can wear, but if you took care of your cards, just a near mint copy of those lands, beautiful.
The art just pops. That's something I really admire about the retro frame. I know I'm one of the sickos who really cares a lot about about which copies of cards they play with. I love the expressive element that Magic offers, and retro frame in particular just kind of says, hey, look at this art box.
Yes.
This is sick. Favorite planes? Go.
So we're talking about like orb builder foils, of course.
Or whatever you want.
Well,
I know you're a Grixis guy, but you have to like some planes.
Well, I can't help but think about the lightning bolt planes from Odyssey.
Ooh.
That is an immaculate foil.
Ooh, you said lightning, and my brain immediately thought of, I think it was the Mirage one. Is it Mirage where it has the storm cloud in the background?
Mirage has a couple great options. The one that comes to mind for me there is the Zebra planes.
Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous.
But also, when it comes to competitive tournaments, I try to play as many unhinged basics as I can. If I have all unhinged, that's usually my go-to for all 5 basic lands.
You are what you play.
Yes. It's kind of reciprocal. It goes both directions.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a sort of chicken and egg situation.
What's your pick? Favorite planes?
Favorite planes? That's actually a tough one. I'll say one of the cards that got me to fall in love with Magic, truly, was the Needle planes from Mirrodin. That was just one that I remember. I'm not going to say my age, not quite a teenager yet. Maybe a teenager, something in that space. I just remember like laying on the floor in my room, just like with a foil one, just kind of watching the light hit it in different ways. It was like, I didn't know a trading card could look this cool.
I was a huge fan of the artifact lands from original Mirrodin.
Oh.
So those kind of stole
Avons.
the show. Those stole the show for me for the lands in that set.
All right, it looks like Jay's happy with their opening 7. Neal going to 6. I think we're going to see this game slow down a little bit as players kind of tune the reactive cards that they have. Jay, certainly someone who knows how to play against a sweeper, making an 8-0 run in this type of field.
Certainly. I would have to imagine on the Esper Goryo side of things, you're priced into mulliganing more in the average game. Just in terms of a functional hand, you can get flooded on Atraxas, flooded on Goryo's Vengeance. And for the Boros Energy side of things, or anybody playing against Goryos in the sideboard games, there's kind of a high bar for what you can keep. You want either kind of your best aggressive draws and or some actual disruption. So an opponent keeping on 7 on the play is probably kind of scary on Nui's side of things.
I actually also really like Jay having Containment Priest. That is a really hard card to play against right now, as people are opting for cards like Prismatic Ending, which are really versatile, but also playing at sorcery speed. That kind of implies that Containment Priest is always going to get its man at least once, which can be devastating.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is turn 1 Sacred Foundry for Vexing Bauble, so a piece of sorts. Turn 2 is going to be Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride. Gain a life, make an energy.
Bread and butter. This is what this deck wants to do every single game.
All right. Can I get a cat token is the question. Nui's going to crack Polluted Delta here.
Looking like it's going to be for a Surveil land.
It often is.
Nothing like Fatal Push in the deck list to check the Ocelot Pride in main phase 2 or anything like that. And because of this Vexing Bauble, Solitude not on the menu.
Right. Noe, given some consideration to colors of mana, you see a Meticulous Archive at the top, and just making sure that he can actually cast his spells.
And it is one of the harder parts of playing this deck, is making sure you don't run into a spot where your Prismatic Ending isn't really castable into, or your Faithless Mending doesn't trip up your Thoughtseize, and so on.
Now considering Shadowy Backstreet, asking himself, what's wrong with Shadowy Backstreet?
What's wrong with taking it? Wah.
That will be the find. Quick shuffle before a Surveil. These are some of my favorite moments when I'm playing. That shuffle with the trigger on the stack.
Oh, yeah.
Visualizing what you want to see.
Just putting it in your mind's eye, manifesting. Oh, is that a Surveil top?
It's a Surveil and Thinking top indeed.
All right. Man has fested.
Cat deployed for Jay, up to 2 energy, back to 20 life. Polluted Delta go for Noe. And we'll see how much Jay can turn up the heat. Start things off with an attack. 3 points coming across.
Noe really wanting to have something like March of Otherworldly Light at this point to maybe tackle that Vexing Bauble, unlock a bunch of the Solitudes in the world.
Could be setting up a Wrath of the Skies here.
Right, there is a point where you can afford to take a little bit of damage to try and actually clothesline JT with more cards, or 4 more cards rather, with a Wrath of the Skies.
Geez, Jay is going to go fetch up a basic Plains, and it makes sense. As the follow-up is Blood Moon.
And this is something that we've seen 1 or 2 copies of in main decks everywhere from Boros Energy for a while now. It's just something that they really don't have to pay that massive of a deck building cost for. We see these basic Plains being things that they've really prioritized fetching at every point, not just this one. And at that point, you just get to say my opponent doesn't get to play some percentage of games.
And the combination with the Vexing Bauble, it turns out some things that Noe would normally be able to do. Now, so much of the mana is just not going to work. Solitude would be countered if it was pitch cast. Pretty tough for Noe if that Blood Moon's on the battlefield. Going to fetch basic Island in response, which suggests there's no interaction. It's going to be Faithful Mending, a desperation Faithful Mending, but you can't even force a negation through the Bauble.
Ooh, yeah, this is the point where I think we're going to see Noe hoping to find basic Plains and Prismatic Ending, which is a pretty tall order.
Yes. And in game 1, this is an Esper deck. I remember you were talking about the potential to fetch a Breeding Pool, which is another 4th color of lands, so really high density of non-basic lands in the Esper deck. Pretty tough to slog through a Blood Moon. None of those colors are red. All right, so a Cat's going to show up for Jay. 3rd energy off of the Guide of Souls. Noe has his work cut out for him here.
Yeah, Jay is in the driver's seat.
Right, Noe draws for turn. Basic Plains.
Oh! Okay.
Prismatic Ending.
Okay, that was step 1.
We play on.
All right, so even though Shadowy Backstreet can't tap for black, it now has to tap for red, which is just what Noe ordered. But Jay has a lot of damage coming across now and hasn't really had to commit more in the way of threats to the table.
Right, so Blood Moon down, but here comes the squad. Guide of Souls now ready to pump up that Ocelot Pride, so 3, 4, 5, 6 damage.
Jay just needs 1 more permanent to have the City's Blessing as well. Counting the cat that is presumably coming at the end step.
Right, right. Not very far off of being able to deal lethal damage. So all the cats and the guide connect. Players confirming life totals. They seem to believe Noe going to 9 here. That's not much more than 6.
No, absolutely not.
Jay currently with 8 permanents, 1 cat. So any additional permanent would get the City's Blessing this turn.
Land drop would be wonderful here. So the big thing is that Jay doesn't want to cast another creature into something like Wrath of the Skies, now that Wrath of the Skies is online. Previously, because there aren't other energy outputs, Noe actually has to pay for the X portion of Wrath of the Skies the old-fashioned way. So there hasn't been a window for that to really get much more than a cat token just yet this game. So now that Jay knows the floodgates for that are open, you really don't want to cast, say, a Ragavan or something onto the battlefield.
Players reconfirming life totals. Nui actually at 11, which is the number that I had thought. So that makes sense to me. And as you were saying, Jay not really interested in committing more into a Wrath of the Skies. Just going to pass here, make some cats. Well, one cat. We're shy of the City's Blessing. And energy is where that die is going.
9 permanents. Energy counter, not counting.
And here is Wrath of the Skies for Nui. X equals 1.
Whoa, what's okay, Vexing Bauble crack.
And that makes sense just so you get the card.
Yep.
And then the Wrath of the Skies will sweep up everything else.
Yep, very true.
And leaving a fetch land up, Nui passes back to Jay. Now the battlefield, a bit of a blank slate. Time to reestablish.
Jay really wanting to have either more Ocelot Pride, something like a Ragavan maybe to keep the pressure on. Flage naturally would be a sight for sore eyes.
Back up Vexing Bauble into Voice of Victory.
Okay. I mean, this is pressure and 2 layers of disruption. Voice of Victory a bit softer on the disruption front, but I like this.
Great sequencing too, the Bauble, so Solitude couldn't catch the voice here. Not the most likely play on this turn, but you want to play them in the right order every time.
I think I want to play the voice first so you can't
So you can't get Force of Negation?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'd be interested to talk to Jay because I definitely trust that they were correct. That is step 1 for me when I see the undefeated players. Jay, not quite at 9-0, but 8-0-1. No losses to their name. That is one where I want to say, okay, I assume you're right. Can you teach me?
This is a spot where sometimes I go too deep. It's possible that Jay was just looking at cards in hand and thought, if you Force of Negation me here, I'm so up on cards, I might just be in a great position.
That's true. In some ways, that is one where you see this in chess a lot, where you say, okay, I just want to solve this. Let's solve this game state from here, where you're going to get my pawn, I'm going to get your pawn, and now we're just both down a pawn, but I'm up pieces, so that's good.
So Nui did just go find a Surveil land, kept on top, and now going to go consult with the judges. I think this is good behavior to reinforce. If you're ever unsure about how something works, the judges staff, they are there to help you. Any rules interaction, any question you might have about what's going on in a game, ask them. The judges are here to help. They would rather be talking to you and helping with your games than standing around as well.
Right, it's the sort of thing as well where I know multiple times, even this weekend, I've gone, hey, can I ask you something away from the table? It's just sometimes going, oh, I have a card that I brought in to play against my opponent, but I need to be positive that this interacts the way that I think it does. Or in some cases, I need to know if a card has the exact toughness that I think it does, that I think is in their hand.
Right. And there is something going on with these open deck list tournaments, too. Maybe you remember all of the cards. Just ask a judge, I want the text box. And sometimes you do see players just ask their opponent, can you tell me what this card does? And they will often oblige because it's open deck lists anyway. But if you want to conceal what you're thinking about, asking the judge is a good way to do that.
Right. And in a lot of ways, Vexing Bauble is also the kind of card that you're going to have to completely change how you think about what you're doing with your cards because you're playing so many free spells. You just end up in really weird situations. So I really respect just saying, okay, let's be sure. I know I had to surveil. I drew my card. Let's make sure this works the way that I think it does.
Right. Nui has found his answer. We are back underway. Tapping 2 mana.
Both blue sources.
Goryo's Vengeance. I would like to put this Atraxa on the battlefield. That was discarded by that Faithful Mending earlier.
All right, no surgical from Jay. Couldn't be. Vexing Bauble in play.
Right. I think it might have been that Phyrexian mana question you were wondering about yesterday.
Yeah. I'm seeing many players who have not lost a match this weekend asking such questions.
A lot of lands here in the Atraxa flip. Faithful Mending, Force of Negation, Solitude, and Psychic Frog as the options. So 3 cards will be going to the hand. It'll be Solitude, Force of Negation, and one of those lands. Kind of a funny distribution of spells against the Vexing Bauble.
And now there's this interesting question where you see some of the lands that I think Noe would want to fetch, but when you're putting that many lands on the bottom, it's actually reverse deck thinning to shuffle that many lands back into your deck when you know otherwise they are in the bottom, say, 7 cards of your deck.
Right.
It also doesn't cost you a life if you think you're going to get a Surveil land anyway.
And I think what you were describing was the consideration. Noe was looking at Watery Grave, but does decide on Polluted Delta over it.
I suspect it's because he might want to grab either Meticulous Archive or Breeding Pool.
Yeah, just not blue and black mana.
Right, exactly.
All right, Atraxa does attack. Noe's back to 17, Jay down to 18.
It also means that you kind of get it both ways, where you can play out the Polluted Delta and hard cast Force of Negation, which you're going to struggle to do in some cases. Oh, no, wait, he's missing 2 blue.
Yeah, the tap of the double blue sources, as you called. That will not be an option this turn. I have to imagine Noe was expecting / hoping / manifesting an Ephemerate from that Atraxa trigger.
Right, of course, of course. Oh, no. Oh.
No, he's talking through something.
Yeah, and I think we also saw him mistap game 1 a little bit on a Psychic Frog. The first round of the day is one of the hardest ones.
Absolutely.
And it's so funny where the later rounds, you naturally have the pressure. I want to convert. I want to get the finish that I was hoping for, expecting coming into the event. But the earlier rounds are the ones where you are literally just tired.
Okay, no, he does have the Ephemerate, though.
Crucial.
All right, look at 10 more cards. Won't be able to rebound that one through the Vexing Bauble, but does get this Atraxa look here. See a couple fetch lands, Goryo's Vengeance, 2 Quantum Riddlers, Psychic Frog, a 3rd Quantum Riddler, a 2nd Psychic Frog, a Hallowed Fountain. So Goryo's Vengeance, that's easy. That's the lone instant. That's going to hand. Quantum Riddler versus Psychic Frog.
That one's kind of a close one. I do like the Riddler, I think. Though I see why he thumbs the Frog out. So this is something that actually can threaten to block Voice of Victory. And at this point, whenever you think you might be discard stepping anyway or reaching a point in the game where the discard step is a possibility, being able to convert that into anything resembling material is pretty valuable.
Makes sense. Hallowed Fountain is the land. And Quantum Riddler, I understand the consideration there. So much of game 1 was just making sure that Noe always had a line and extra cards. Psychic Frog does take extra steps on that front, but pound for pound, as far as efficiency and being able to immediately attack or block, the Frog kind of gets the job done quicker. As you see a shock for the Hallowed Fountain, and here comes the Frog. I had forgotten about the frog noises.
You can't say it like that.
Okay, now he goes for a pitch cast on Solitude because Voice of Victory is in play. Couldn't do it on the opponent's turn. A little Vexing Bauble check. Jay passes.
It was a long turn.
It was a long turn.
I cannot stress enough, we have all been there.
Marsh Flats is going to be land number 4 for Jay. Voice of Victory does not have particularly good attacks into Psychic Frog or Atraxa.
Right. Part of the nice thing about developing Psychic Frog is if it turned out that Jay brought in something like Celestial Purge, that this voice is not clear for takeoff.
There's Celestial Purge. There goes Atraxa. Here's an Ocelot Pride. The Frog does remain as a problem.
Yeah, my intuition is Jay doesn't want to trade this Voice of Victory for a Force of Negation and a Polluted Delta to put 2 counters on Psychic Frog. Frog also can just block and take 2 if it turns out that Noe wants to keep his cards.
And I'm really liking the Psychic Frog take over the Quantum Riddler on the previous turn, the way that played out with the Atraxa answered. Now Noe just immediately does have this creature on the battlefield.
Yes.
As Noe draws, here's that Polluted Delta that was picked up last turn.
We're starting to see Noe approach the phase of the game where he can just start hard casting Atraxa.
Can also still cheat, as here's Goryo's Vengeance. Cheat in the... not cheat in the fair playing Magic sense of the word.
Ooh, is that Gristlebrand?
Sure looks like it.
All right, and it looks like Jay has seen enough. Hand across the table. Noe advances to 10 wins, 0 losses.